around these people, you know, who don't like to fuss and fight and hate and drink and so forth. But I love this guy. You know, they're real cool people because they support. Your friends are often your worst enemies because often you pick them because they do not confront you with truth. They do not confront you with your reality. They help to maintain you in your own self-deception. They don't say, hey, you're wrong. You're destroying yourself. It's terrible. Often we get rid of those people. They make us angry. Hey, I'm having fun. You blew my high, man. You know, you blew my head. You know, this person hanging around here, they not smoking and partying with me. You know, you put a wet blanket on the whole party. And, of course, the thing you're running from, of course, is that they may be pointing out how foolish and self-destructive you are. But you don't want to face that right now. So what do? You move toward people who support this. So the self-hating person falls in love, surely, and experiences love, surely. But more 9 times out of 10, they're going to move toward a person who maintains their self-destructiveness. A part of the problem with the black love situation today, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have been duped into self-hatred by the European. You see? He's made us hate our heritage, hate our skin, hate our hair, hate our noses and our lips. He's made us hate Africa itself and the whole African heritage. He's made us hate being black as individuals. So consequently, we're going to love somebody who doesn't remind us of who we are and what we are, you see. And we move then in our love toward people who can help us what? Escape from that which we hate. And that's why we will often love our enemies if those enemies can take us away from ourselves. That's why we love our overeating. We love our over-sexing ourselves. We love our drugs. Anything that does what? Takes us away from our situation, we love it. And you will see, ladies and gentlemen, when you're in an oppressed situation, your world must be reversed. The European is 10% of the world's population, but yet rules over the other 90%. Europeans have no real natural resources or whatever, real natural wealth in their land, but yet they are the richest people on earth. Japan has no natural resources whatever, but yet it is seen as a powerful nation. These nations can only achieve that by maintaining the other 90% of the world in a state of deception, in a state of craziness and madness. That's the only way it can be done. You can only be robbed when you're deceived and you don't know what to do with the wealth that you have. And this is the community we have here today. The black community here, if we looked at it as a nation, would be the 10th or 9th richest nation on earth, but yet you call yourself poor. You don't want to educate your own children using your own money. You can't build your own schools and build your own universities and build your own nations. Not because you don't have money, but because the love you have makes you spend the money with your enemy. And you spend it then with the pusher and with the other person, and they make you feel good, and you love them because they supply you with this. And this love then, of course, takes you away. And you hate the people who don't supply you with that, even though they're your best friends, you see, and you attack them. So then this self-hatred that has been introduced into the black man means that often, if we do not clear this self-hatred out, we will love each other, yes, but the kind of love we have for each other will often end up destroying us. It will destroy our children, and we see many of our children are destroyed in the name of what? Love. Many of you youngsters will have children out of wedlock before you're prepared to have children, before you've grown in wisdom and knowledge. Why? Because what? I love him. He loves me. I wanted to have someone I could love all to myself. You got to know how to love. And sometimes you haven't grown enough yet to know what real love is about and how to truly love an individual. Love is not just a good feeling. It is about more than good feelings. As I will show you later, heroin makes you feel good too. Crack makes you feel good too. All kinds of destructive things make you feel good. And so if you love simply because you feel so good, then you can still love in a way that's going to destroy you and destroy the people that are with you. So it's not enough for you to have a baby for a boy because he makes you feel so good when you're with him, or because you have this great feeling. you see. It's deeper than that, and it involves more than that. People then who have not come to terms with their self-hatred are people who are going to love in a way that's going to destroy them. In order for us to be ruled over by this minority of people, we have to be backwards. Our minds have to be turned backwards. As I said earlier, this people who rule us today, we are a minority people in the world. We're not, we are a what? A majority people in the world. We're not minorities. There are many, many more black people in the world than there are white people, ladies and gentlemen. Many more. However, we've been deceived into thinking of ourselves as minorities. The European countries are dependent on us. We're not dependent on them. They must get their mineral resources from Africa. They must get their oil from Africa. They must get their diamonds from Africa. These computers and these technological instruments you see here today are only made possible through the minerals taken from the southern tip of Africa itself, because the minerals and metals are not found in this country at all. Up to almost 100% of the metals and other things that make space probing possible, that make satellites possible, that make jet planes possible and so forth, come right out of the soils of Africa. And yet we see Africans over there starving to death, ladies and gentlemen. And then they are projected as being what? Dependent nations. But it is the European who is dependent, but he must make you think what? That you are dependent. It's the old con game, isn't it? Yeah. This is the only way a minority of people, though, can rule over a giant, you see? It's by conning them. It's like, you're the weak one. You're the dependent one. You need me. You can't live without me. You can't have all these TVs and this stuff if I didn't exist in the world. And, of course, when you think that, you then submit and give your wealth away and hand it to them and let them have it. And then they, of course, use that same wealth against you to destroy you, to restrict you in various sorts of ways. So we must be when you're filled with self-hate, your mind is reversed. What it means is this: you will love the things that destroy you, and you will hate the things that advance your growth. And you watch and look at your behavior. Look at the behavior of your compatriots and watch if what I'm saying is not true. I hate to read. I hate to study. I hate to learn. Oh, but I love to party. I love to smoke. I love to drink. I love to screw. I love to, ho. And all the loves often you will find will be loves that what? That don't advance you one bit, and yet you can't get over them. You're addicted to them, you see. But the things that lead to growth in wisdom, knowledge, you see, self-understanding and self-discovery, healthy relations, self-control, all those things are hateful. But this is the only way a minority can rule over a majority of people, is by turning their minds backwards so that they love the things that destroy them and hate the things that move them forward. In order for these people to rule over us, we must hate learning. It has to be built into us. We must think that we can't do math. Because you see, if we do math, if we were into learning, if we were into research and into thinking and into, real philosophical ideas and abstractions, we would defeat those people. They know it. So consequently, what they must do is rob you of all of these things so that they may stay in their place. And you'll see that even in the man-woman relationship. A man often robbing the woman of any intellectual growth, any personal growth, any knowledge, any wisdom, because he sees that as the only way he can rule over her and maintain her under control. And if she shows that she's growing and developing, he gets angry and resentful and hateful. I tell many of my students sometimes, my female students into my classes at the college, before you get through being educated, many of your husbands are going to leave you, or your family's going to break up. And of course, some of them get angry. What? Who are you to say to what? So-and-so. But I know the nature of what? Many of the men you deal with. Jealousy. You're hanging out with those college boys. You see, or now you're getting too smart, or now you're trying to move past me. And I've seen women who had to leave college because the husband is giving them such a hard time, or the boyfriend is giving them such a hard time, or he's hanging out in front of the school, or going through all kinds of changes. I've even seen families have their children removed out of the college because this is the first one in college and they are wrestling with this one maybe moving in some kind of way. And so in almost all kinds of blocks are thrown in that way, even if it means keeping up noise or disrupting them in some form or another. Often then they destroy the individual. We love those then who keep us from realizing our self-hatred. You see, one of the reasons why we get so euphoric when we're in love is that by focusing our minds and our energies and our obsession upon another person, by trying to live through another individual, by trying to make that individual our total world, by idealizing that individual and making them some goddess or some god, we think by that it's going to lift us up beyond who we are. It helps us to avoid knowing who and what we are. It keeps us from hating ourselves. Through their love, we come to love ourselves. And in that sense, that's why we get stuck on them. We feel that we need them. And when they leave us, we experience what? Depression and suicidal kinds of drives and so forth. Because that self-hatred, which they've made us escape from while they were with us, now comes back to haunt us again, and we get involved. Some people get drunk, and some people actually commit suicide when their lovers leave them, you see, and so forth. So often then, this love, this euphoria that we feel for other individuals is a euphoria based on the fact that they have taken us from truth and taken us from reality and taken us outside of us. That's one reason why we say love is what? Blind. Blinds the individual to reality. So that person you're in love with is not, and who claims to love you back, particularly if that love feeds your self-hatred or helps you to escape your own reality, is not doing you a favor. As a matter of fact, they are part of the problem. That is why often the ones we love are the ones who what? Hurt us and destroy us. In a way, we almost set ourselves up for it when our love is based on unhealthy roots. The consequences of the fear instinct. There's also fear there as well. We often hate the things we fear. The love for our aggressors comes out of fear. What I mean by that, you know, a very peculiar thing happens. You ever ask yourself the question, the Europeans enslaved us, hundreds of thousands of our ancestors died on the ships coming over here. And some of you youngsters and others, when you have a chance to read about how the African was transported over to this country, if it doesn't fill you with hurt and tears, then of course I guess, I don't know, it's hard to describe what you would be. Take time and read this kind of situation where people had to go for weeks at a time with no headroom, with maybe about this much room between them and the floor where they could never stand up, where they laid down on the rough planks and the sea, as it moved the ship, rubbed the very skin and meat off their bones, where they had to lay in their own urination and their own defecation, where they were chained often to people who were dead next door to them and so forth. Look at that kind of thing. You see, many of us can only love our enemies because we haven't read it and we've forgotten. Many of us don't want to read it because it does fill us with anger and hatred and fear and so forth. Many of us avoid Black history because we try to avoid the fear and the anger and the bad feelings it's going to produce in us. But when we avoid it, it also means that we avoid knowing ourselves and who we are as a people. Of course, the slavery is another adventure. Jim Crowism, racial discrimination, all of this. Yet at the end of all of this, why is it that we want to marry these people? Why is it that we want to sleep with them and live with them and roll with them? Why is it we just forget all of the things that they have done to our grandparents and our great-grandparents and the things they're doing to us right now and the things they're going to do to us in the future? You see, why do we do that, you see? Why do we want hair like them? Why do we want noses like them? Why do we want skin color like them? Why do we want to talk like them and walk like them and be like them after they have done all of this kind of stuff to us as a people? Why do we love them more than we love ourselves? Have you ever thought about that kind of issue? And yet this happens all the time. And it is a very standard thing in psychology. We call it love for the aggressor, identity with the aggressor, where one loves the one that persecutes them in an unhealthy sort of way and identifies with the person that persecutes them. This goes on in families. We don't have time to go into the psychological details of this, but this is a part of what Freud talked about when he talked about the Oedipus complex. That his theory is that the boy comes to be like his father because the boy hates his father. And it's a very interesting kind of concept there. He wants to get rid of his father. Then how does he come to be like his father, we say? Because if he comes out and actually tells his father how much he hates him, the father might do what? Destroy him. You see? He's dependent upon his father. He needs his father. And that need and dependency, that fear that his father will hurt him or destroy him, the fact that he feels weak relative to his father, then sets him up to say, I can't express my hatred. I can't express my hostility. And yet this hostility is tearing me apart. This hatred is tearing me apart. How can I get rid of it? And he gets rid of it by saying, then, I'll do what my father says do. I'll be like my father. If I think the way my father thinks, if I behave the way my father behaves, if I look at the world the way my father looks at it, if I have the values that my father has, if I be as much like my father as possible, then I will escape my father's punishment and death. If I can show my father that I love him, that I'm the same as he, then my father will not victimize me. Now, it's a peculiar theory, but it has some interesting aspects about it. To a good extent, the relationship between African peoples and white people is a father-child relationship. We think of ourselves as weak, powerless against the white man. We see him as the source of gifts, the source of blessing. He gives us the jobs, he gives us the protection, he gives us the food, he provides the water, he provides the housing, he provides this, he provides that. You see? And we also think because we're weak, we cannot go directly against him to destroy him, even though he hurts us, even though he degrades us, even though he frustrates us, even though he enslaves us and discriminates against us. We still don't quite get up the drive to say, well, I'm going to destroy this person who degrades me and who is destroying me. Because we feel as if we need him in some kind of way, that we can't live without him. He also tells us that you suffer because you have a different color. You suffer because you have a different kind of shaped nose. You suffer because you have a different hair. You suffer because you come from Africa. You suffer because you don't look like me. And what do we go for then? We say, well, if I want to get out of this suffering, then I should be as much like him as possible. As a matter of fact, if I get so much like him where he can't tell the difference between me and himself, he won't punish me anymore. I will no longer be, what? A victim. So therefore, we are motivated then to come outside of ourselves, to move toward the person that is destroying us and victimizing ourselves, hoping that if we can get them to love us, and if we can show them how much we love them, And if we show them how much alike we can be, we can get them to not see us as colored. You know, look at me, don't look at me as a black person, look at me as a person. You know, to abstract us. In other words, in order for other people to love us, they must not see the blackness of our skins. They must see some kind of invisible abstraction before them. True love is a person who sees you for all of your blackness and your big lips and your big nose and your kinky hair and still does what? Loves you. If they got to remove your hair and they can't see you standing before them as a black person, they don't love you, ladies and gentlemen. For a person to say, I don't see you as black, how can you not see me as black? I'm standing right in front of you. But this is the kind of thing we want these people to do, to abstract who we are. And therefore, if we become a distraction, that means we leave who we are. We have to come outside of ourselves. That's why we want to be educated with them and educated like them and so forth. We want to not identify in any way with Africa, African people, because to identify with Africa and African people is to suffer. So consequently, we even come to hate ourselves and come to hate our people and come to love the people who destroy us, but it's an unhealthy kind of love. We come to resemble those people. We want to take their values and their orientations toward life. And when they accept us, we escape from our self-hatred. And therefore, we look as if we look for their love to take us outside of ourselves as a people. So consequently, even when we don't love them, when we love even within our own group, we still often look for a kind of love that will take us outside of ourselves, which means then that we become false and unreal and untrue and dishonest and deceptive, unknowing. And how can you develop then a beautiful household and beautiful children and a beautiful community with a love based on this kind of hatred? Too much of the love in this system, not only among black people, but even in this country as a whole, black, white, blue, green, and yellow, is love based on hatred and resentment, on people trying to escape from themselves. It's a love based on fear, you see, fear of rejection. Why do you have that baby? I figured if I didn't have him, he'll leave me. Because the man says, if you don't have it, I'll leave you. The only way I can hold on to him is by having this. What kind of love is that? It's not a productive kind of love, and the problem is, it always what? It almost always fails. It doesn't work out. And you can see hundreds and hundreds of our people, our women and men, trying to hold on to love and hold on to a man and hold on to somebody by having children and families for them, even in marriage. You know, I figured if we have these children, this will bring us together. Big lie. Rarely does having children bring a man and a woman together. You got to be together on your own terms. You cannot put children in that kind of position where they are used to hold you and your man together. That's a misuse of the child. That's then a love that becomes destructive, you see. So it's a love developed out of fear. But people who are fearful love, but they love in a way where they make other people fear them. You see, if they feared, and the greatest thing that an oppressed person fears is really himself and self-knowledge and self-knowing. Because they're afraid when they look at themselves, they're not the big person they think they are. They're not the big hero they think they are. They're not the smart guy they think they are. They're not the cutest guy they think they are. They're not God's gift to women and God's gift to the earth. They have many weaknesses and lacks in their own personality. But they don't want to face that, because if they face that, they figure other people will reject them, will not accept them for who they are. So they project a front upon the world. And they love people who help them support that kind of front. They're running away from anxiety. So their life is built around avoidance. But in order for them to maintain your love, they must make you fear losing their love. So you live in fear of them. Oh, if I don't do this, he'll leave me. If I don't do this, he'll hurt me. And as long as he got you anxious about whether he leave you or whether he's going to reject you or whether he's going to pay you any attention, and you're caught up and build your life around that, it keeps you from seeing who this person really is. It keeps you from seeing his real weaknesses. It keeps you from seeing the emptiness of his life, you see. And therefore, he loves you to the degree that you're blind to who and what he is, and to the degree that you also cannot bring forth and let him see what he is about. And therefore, these fearful people love too, but they love only by injecting fear into the ones they love. They terrorize their wives, they terrorize their children, they terrorize their neighborhoods, and they just terrorize people in general. People have a fear of suffering. A great part of the problems in this world is a fear of suffering. You know, we've grown a generation of people here who feel like there's something constitutionally wrong with suffering, you know? And I guess that may be this movement from the country to the city. You see, if you're born in the country like I, you learn how to suffer and bear it. You know, to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning before sunrise, and whether you feel like it or not, and get out there and do what has to be done, whether you feel like it or not, to solve your problems, to sit down and study, to do your work, whether you like it or not. Your liking it or not has nothing to do with it. But we got a generation here that says, if I don't like it, I have no right to do it. I have a right to be happy all the time. There should not be any suffering in my life at all. That's crazy and it's stupid. And people who try to escape suffering and try to escape pain, because it is through pain and suffering that often you come to know yourself, and you come to grow, and you get strength, and you get character, and you know how to commit yourself to something and do something. But if you get caught up where you're going to escape all kinds of suffering, you're going to lead yourself into destruction, you see. Then you want to stay what? High all the time. You want to stay coked up and doped up and smoked up and liquored up and sexed up and all the other kind of ups, you see. But in the end, it keeps you out of school, it keeps you from learning, it keeps you from growing, it blinds you to yourself, it destroys your family. You got to steal from them, you got to rob somebody, you got to mug somebody, you got to leave your children starving on the floor, you got to leave your wife and the whole bit, because you can't stand what? Suffering. You can't take a little what? Pain. You fear it. You're not a man, you're a child when you fear pain, when you fear suffering, when you fear doing something even though you don't always feel like doing it. That's childish. And yet then many of us, because we have suffered, we figure we have a right now to live happy, you know, forever after. And the only way you can live happy forever after is often by getting into synthetic happinesses, drugs and other kinds of things, and getting away. And if the thing that you fear most is your own self, it means that the only way you're going to get happy is by escaping from yourself, which means you're going to live a totally false life, a disconnected, schizophrenic type of life. So then the ultimate fear then is a fear of self-knowledge. You love someone who helps to maintain your self-unknowing, who keeps you out of yourself. Don't talk about that African stuff. Hey, I would go with that dude, but he's always talking about black people, always talking about Africa. He's into that 1960s stuff. You know, a lot of us like to view people who are dealing with the problems and issues of black people as in the 1960s. I'm talking about now. That wasn't my problem. I wasn't back there then. You have not escaped it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care how young you are. You can be a babe in arms. The history of your people is with you right at this moment. In fact, that very attitude is the result of the history of your people. When you have it, it means you have been had. You have been suckered and made a chump, because you're set up now to destroy yourself as a people. And out of that then comes a fear of women and fear of men, and ultimately a fear of intimacy. Why do people, a good part of love, you see, involves opening yourself up to somebody, letting them see your weaknesses. No, I'm not all Mr. Man. I'm not all Mr. Right. I tell you in a minute, I'm no saint, okay? I have all kinds of flaws and weaknesses. But there are some people who feel that they have to project this image of what? Perfection, saintliness. I'm the greatest. And some of you now got these foolish rap songs. I'm the king of the world, and I can do this and that. I can... And notice it's the weakest, most powerless, depressed, run-down people coming up with all of that hype and nonsense. And instead of actually being what they're saying, they're just ready to hear the bumps and the knocks and get off on that. And so that very hype, instead of motivating you to move forward and do something, is the very thing that maintains you right into it. And listen to the lyrics, you know, I'm Superman, and I'm the super lover, and and look at all the use often that's in it. You know, I'm going to do the girls, and I'm going to do the boy, and I can kick this and do that. And watch it. It's filled with unproductive kinds of behavior. But at the same time, it hypes people up, you see, in some kind of way. And at some of our concerts, we've seen people even fighting and struggling with each other at the very concerts where this kind of thing is happening. Even though I grant you, many of the rap lyrics do have positive things. So I'm making a generalization here, and I listen to the rap. Some of the rap is very good, and it's an excellent medium for getting across some good messages as well. So I'm not condemning the rappers. I'm condemning the kind of rap, though, that creates false pride and takes you outside of yourself and outside of your reality and keeps you outside of it. Because some of you, those radios have grown to your ears. You can't get rid of it. Look at what Nakasone said about us the other day. The reason why America is behind, what, is because of the presence of blacks, Puerto Ricans, and Mexicans. And women don't, when I'm on TV, don't remember what I say. They only remember the color of my tie. These are the people, though, that you keep in business, and watch the arrogance come out of them. Still seeing us like what? Dogs and children. Hardly any of you with these radios can go to a black dealership and buy it. But yet you support Japan. You support it in every kind of way. And the premier of Japan shows you the contempt that he has for you. You give your money to every other group but yourself. You can't spend in your own grocery stores and your own supermarket and your own places, and then you complain about how the people treat you bad. But how can you be respected when you take your money and instead of spending it with your own people and supporting your own families and building your own economics and hiring your own children and making the system for yourself, how can you be respected? The people can see that you're a fool right along with that. You indicate what a fool you are. And then you want to be a fool, and yet you want somebody to act like you're not. They're doing you a service when they tell you that you're a fool. Nakasone did people a service, because hopefully it woke some of us up to recognize that these Japanese don't think any more about us than these whites think about us. They're willing to take our money and willing to drive you crazy with this music that we listen to day in and day out that we can't live without. But at the same time, they don't think a damn thing about you. And what we want from them, an apology. No, don't worry about the apology. Think about what the thing says, you see. And this is the kind of love that, yet we love that radio. We love Panasonic. We love Sony. We love Mitsubishi. We love Japanese cars. Anything Japanese, we want it. And yet you don't even see the Japanese going crazy with that music, but driving other people crazy. And we love it so much until we don't say, hey, man, since you're selling us all these radios, why don't you give a dealership to black people so we can at least make some money off of it? You see, no, we're too busy wrapped up in the music. Your black people make over 60% of the money in the music industry is made by black people. And what do you look at? You're wrapped up in the stars. But stars come and go. Some of them get one hit and they're gone. Some of them a year or two and they're gone. Who gets the money, though, forever? It's the lawyers and the promoters and the other people you don't see up front. That the star gets only a few pennies from each record. It's the company itself that gets the real dust. But we don't want to be those people because we're caught up in the star. We're caught up in the stage action. We're caught up in the video. You are giving billions of dollars away to another people that you can give to yourself and to your children. But because you're caught up in the music, and the music takes you outside of who you are and what you are, you are then robbed, and you wonder why you can't make it in the world. you see, because we're hung up into what? Good feelings and fear. So then when people are raised in fear and hatred and self-hatred, their love based on that self-hatred is going to be a love that's ultimately destructive. It means then that we want to escape intimacy, and yet intimacy is a major part of love. Exposing oneself to being hurt. You see, many people, I can't love because what? I'm going to be hurt. I can't stand it. I can't stand being hurt. So either I want love, or else if I do fall in love, as the song goes, when I fall in love, it will be forever. That way I won't have to feel the pain if it leaves me. And so you drive a man crazy. You drive a woman crazy, because even when they spit in your face, you still cling on and hold on. Because you say, oh, it's raining. You see, why? Because you're afraid that you don't have enough strength and power to survive and be on your own. So then, often then, you don't want to reveal yourself and open yourself up, because you tend to think, if they really knew who I was, they wouldn't love me. You see, so then you cut yourself off and you love with a part of yourself. That leads to frigidity, that leads to impotence, that leads to unsatisfactory sexual relationships, that leads then to deception and dishonesty in your relationship with your boyfriend, in the relationship to your husband, in relationship to your wife, because you're afraid, and the man that says, well, if I let her know I'm weak, she'll take that weakness and manipulate me with it. Take advantage of me with it. And the woman says the same thing. So you have two people here who live in hypocrisy, one with the other. So consequently, we escape intimacy. These people then who love out of fear and hatred, then fear being self-revealing, because it makes them vulnerable. They also fear commitment, which is another part of love. To commit oneself to another person, to commit yourself to their protection and to sharing with them and caring for them, to put your resources at their disposal, to struggle to make life better for them and yourself. But people who have self-doubt, people who have self-hatred, people who've been outside of themselves and therefore have not developed their talents, have problems with commitment. Because they want to appear often to be successful and powerful and great and filled with beauty and all this other kinds of stuff. And they feel if they make a commitment, then they will fail. They will be shown for what they really are. Their inability to provide for their families, their inability to protect their women, their inability to educate their children, their inability to provide for their community and their race and their group. So if you don't want to be embarrassed, if you don't want to be perceived as a failure, then you make no what? No commitments. You see? And therefore people who love out of fear, who love out of self-hatred, who love out of their inferiority complex, love people who don't demand anything from them, who don't require that they what? Commit themselves in some fashion or other. So you're going to find that you love this woman to the degree that what? She doesn't ask you for anything. But when she starts demanding your time, demanding your energy, demanding a bit of your commitment, all of a sudden that love what? Disappears. You get married, you've been making love every weekend, you've been getting high together every weekend, you've been kissing and hugging and having fun. You know, that weekend love can deceive you, you know. Because many people, when they get into the weekend love, they figure, oh, well, when I get married, that just means 7 weekend days per week. You know, it's just going to be love and sweet beauty every night. But it doesn't work out that way, unfortunately. And when that child arrives, then you begin, what the heck have I got myself into here now? I've got a whole life now to take care of. I got a wife and a family I got to take care of. And all of a sudden, it's not as much fun as it used to be. All of a sudden, it's the stuff is not quite as good as it used to be, you see. And you get a little bored with it, and you get a little tired of it. And the woman starts asking, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to feed the baby and bring some diapers here and move to a better place? And you start hating her for that, you see. And you think she's unfair. and you want to beat her sometimes, or leave her, or do something else. And sometimes you desert her, because now your weekend love has turned into reality. Because now you're forced to make a commitment, and now you're forced up against the reality of yourself, because you have to question, can I do it? Do I have the talent? Do I have the abilities? Do I have the education? Do I have the drive? Do I have the ability to take the suffering and go through with it like a man? Or is it that I've been so much in love, because it didn't require any commitment on my part? I've been so high all the time. I've been having so much fun, I didn't take time to develop these kinds of things. Now the woman tricked me. She brought me into this. Now I hate her for it. The children are out after me, you see. And this is the kind of love then that comes from fear. And this is one of the reasons why we then hate intimacy, because often, many times, even your woman or man doesn't want you to be intimate, because their love depends upon their idealization of you. Oh, you're the greatest. I've never had it like this before. It's the greatest I've ever had in my life, you know. And oh, we're going to be so happy. And oh, here's this young, muscular man, and I'm going to have this body to myself every night, and all of this. You know, we're caught up in all of these fantasies, you see. And he's caught up in this fantasy, his own fantasies again. Oh, I'm going to have this at home waiting for me, cooking dinner, taking care of my children while I tip out and get a few more pieces somewhere else. However, I'll still, you know, I'll still make it. She's not going to complain too much, because, you know, if I love her right and everything, she'll like that, you know. You know, all these kind of fantasies that we put in to each other's heads, you see. But then when you're faced with the children and the family, you're faced then with yourself and who you really are. But what I'm saying here too is, often the person with you doesn't want to see who you really are, because they're getting such a great thrill from who they imagine you are. We often then fall in love with love, you see. We fall in love with the feeling. Hey, don't spoil this thing with reality, man, please. You know, so even when the person is really acting out and showing you what kind of a nasty, selfish, self-centered individual they are, you sit there and decide not to see it. Or you say, well, with enough love, I'll change him. A woman's greatest mistake. You are not going to change a man. You can have all the kind of love, and often because you had the wrong love anyway, but you can have all the kind of love, women, that you think you have for a man. Do not deceive yourself. It is very, very difficult to change a man. And to think that you're going to change a man after you get married to them is to wallow in deep self-deception. If he's not halfway right or 3/4 right before you get hooked up, leave the man alone, I'm telling you. Leave. Cut it out. If you cannot make him what he should be before you get committed and before you have the children, watch out. When you have the children, it's going to be too late. But often, because you feel so good, you give yourself these lies. Oh, with enough love, with understanding, we are going to communicate with each other and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't get around to it. And to a good extent, then, the woman ends up getting what she deserves. Because often her friends, her parents, her elders, other people are telling her all the time, the guy's no good, using you. But what do you do with that friend? Curse him out. Mind your own business. You know, and the whole bit, you just jealous. You know, and we rationalize it in all kinds of ways. And consequently then, we want to act surprised and disappointed when the truth finally comes through. And then we want to leave. Sometimes we want to hurt the children. Well, nobody cares about me. Why should I care about somebody else? And often this is done in reference to the children. You look at the children and you see your husband or the man who left you, and you hate them for it. And you project into them their hatred. Or you sit around them and you talk about how evil and terrible men are. And you make the boys not want to be men. And you make the girls grow up hating men, tricking men, playing games on them, because they've heard sitting at your knee all the things you've had to say about them, how you've projected yourself as Miss Victim and the man is Mr. Monster. You see, these games that people play. So you cannot if you truly love a person, you cannot maintain that person in their illusion. True love means you have to be truthful as well to the individual. And I'll wrap it up here shortly. Happiness gained from hatred and fear serves to maintain your oppression, to strengthen your pusher, to maintain your non-productiveness. You see, a lot of us, we want to be happy, but we view happiness as a feeling. As we said earlier, pardon me, heroin can make you feel happy. Crack can make you feel happy for a while. Smoke and dope can make you feel happy. Overeating can make you feel happy. Alcohol can make you feel happy. And to do these things, you have to hate yourself. To sit and watch yourself become enslaved to a drug, to watch yourself become degraded where you have to sell your body in order to get a few seconds high, to go through beggary, to have to rob, to have to steal in order to get a moment of what you call happiness, to take a man's abuse, to take his degradation, to get what you call a few moments of happiness, means ultimately then that you are serving that person. You enrich the pusher. You enrich the people that oppress you. You give false pride to that man. When he misuses you and you put up with it, he grows in his pride and grows away from himself. He gains power through your own destruction and putting you down. It makes you unproductive as an individual. You get caught up then in trying to get this feeling. This often happens to our people as a people. We are so much, and we want to be loved by these Europeans so badly until we forget to spend the money with ourselves. A part of getting them to love us is that we must spend the money. Let me go in here and buy this $500 suit and show them white folk that I can spend like they do. You know, and let me go down here at Macy's and let me go whatever, you know, go to this shop, you know, and prove something to these people. And they see I'm not like the rest of them niggas out there. You see. When you need their love, you see, in that sense, because it comes out of you hating yourself, you have to take them your money. You see, you have to work for them, and whatever you produce has to be given back to them as a people. Basketball players, football players making millions of dollars have to end up giving it back to the other people, cannot give it to their own. You have to spend it with the other people because you want them to be nice. And they grin at you and pat you on your butt or talk about you in a very snide sort of way, at the same time reaching for your dollars. And later on, they're like Nakasona, they talk about you like a dog, and you wonder why. You get no respect. But love that grows out and happiness that is based on self-hatred is only a happiness that can lead to the strengthening of other individuals. It's time for us to have an Africa car, ladies and gentlemen. Not one built in Japan, but one built in Africa. And to build things coming from ourselves. But we think happiness is buying from some white person, buying some white house, buying into some white community, going to some white school. That's happiness for us. When you define, and because what? I feel good. Oh, they don't treat me like I'm colored. You know, I forget about I'm black when I'm around them. I just feel so good. But see, when I'm around my own, I'm reminded that I'm black, so I don't really want to be around them, you see. So it means what? You take all of your talent, all of your resources, and everything then has to be given to the people. And of course, they see, well, oh, look at these fools. They're just giving us our money. You go and on the picket line and you fall before buses and force your children into their arms. And they tell you, we don't want to be bothered with your children. We don't want to educate your children. It is to our advantage that they stay stupid and ignorant. Oh, take them anyhow. I'll be happy if they're there. So happiness leads to this kind of stuff. Happiness, too, may be rooted in hatred and fear. And often the kind of happiness we move toward is a happiness that takes us from ourselves. When happiness becomes an exclusive goal, when happiness is defined as only a feeling, you see, just feeling good, you see, and not looked at in terms of where it comes from, that happiness is going to be the source of your destruction. Many of us have been destroyed because we have this feel-good definition of happiness. I talked with one man one day. He says, well, I live in a white neighborhood. My children play with my children. What should I do? And someone in the audience said, move. You know, go to a place where they will be. Oh, no, I have the right to live wherever I feel and so forth. And I said, well, isn't it interesting that the white man can feel like he has all kinds of rights in the world, and it doesn't necessitate him living with black people at all. He doesn't feel like he's been deprived of a thing for not living with black people. He doesn't feel like he's deprived of a thing for not spending money with black people. He doesn't feel like he's been deprived of a thing for not sending his children in black schools. But we are the ones who feel deprived. You see,